Hello, everybody. This is Chedva Rose, your host for Jewish Adulting Podcast. I want to remind everybody to subscribe, to like, comment, share, follow, rate our podcast because that helps other people find us. It helps bring up the metrics for our audience. And then we have more people who are interested in speaking on the podcast. So, and also I know that a lot of people have been listening, they haven't been subscribing, liking, or sharing. So that is something I want to encourage everybody to do. I have with me a guest, Rena Yudkowsky, and she's a professional memory coach and geriatric social worker. She's the founder of Memory Matters. She teaches online memory improvement courses to midlifers and seniors. She's director of development at a senior enrichment program in Israel. She's a trainer for dementia caregivers, and she's a facilitator of support groups and international lecturer on aging topics. She is super passionate about the mission of helping those 50 plus to age more healthfully, both physically and cognitively, as she empowers them to believe in their own memory with confidence. Now, Rena, thank you so much for being here with me. I know you're in Israel, so the time difference is something that I appreciate any of my Israeli interviewees for being here and working with me.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's the evening here, but that's okay.
Okay. In evening, our memory does decline as we get tired, but we could talk about that.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to bring Rena on was a few things. One is the first time Rena reached out to me and told me that she does memory things, I thought to myself two things. One was, why did I come to the refrigerator? Why am I in the kitchen? Where did I put my keys? That as a 40-something-year-old, I also struggle with memory. And so this is something very, on top of mind as I grow older, that I start to wonder, is it my medication? Is it my sleeping habits? Is it my electronic usage? And then as I see my parents aging and their parents aging, there becomes this whole, fear of forgetting about the past and forgetting the people we love and forgetting, day-to-day tasks. So I wanted to speak with Rena specifically about how memory works, cognitive declines, and these kinds of things, and also put it into the context of, Judaism. This is something that is not too early to do. I think I'm right in that time frame, but I'm sure I'm not the only 40-something-year-old. And I used to do this when I was 30-something. And, this is obviously something that could affect all ages. Rena, why don't you tell me first how you came to be involved as a memory coach? What was your what was the point that you realized this was something you wanted to do? Where did you see the need for this?
Okay, good question. So it started a long time ago when I was a teenager and all my friends went to camp and I didn't want to go to camp. So guess where I went? I went to the nursing home to volunteer. I was about 16 years old and I volunteered in Baltimore because that's where I'm from. And I loved it. I loved working with older people. And I kept doing that and I kept loving it. And I kept feeling passionate about helping seniors and improving their quality of life. So when I had to go for a degree, I had no other interest. So I went for a degree originally it was sociology because they had a specialization in gerontology. And then I went on for a master's in social work and I specialized in clinical aging. And then my first job out of graduate school, I was the head of an Alzheimer's unit in an assisted living facility. So that's pretty much how I got into the field, but it really came from a passion and a love of working with seniors and really wanting to improve their lives and their quality of life. So I pursued that as a career. And then I got married and moved to Israel. And I've been working in the field here in a lot of interesting ways. But when you work with people that have different types of dementias, you really start to wonder, like, how does memory work? Why does it decline? Why does it really not work? Like when you see people in advanced stages of Alzheimer's, like what makes it not work? And it's very sad to watch, but it's also very fascinating to figure out. And over the past 25 years, research has come a long way in terms of figuring out how to delay, prevent, and even some doctors are talking about reversing cognitive decline. So it's exciting and it's empowering. And that's where I'm coming from. I want to empower seniors to age more gracefully, age more healthfully, and age more confidently. Like you can believe in your memory. You can improve your memory. So I don't care if you're 40 something years old, you can improve your memory, and it starts now, but definitely when you're 80 something, you can still improve your memory. So that's a little bit of my background. And so when I was so interested in memory, I actually took a course in Hebrew about memory. And then I started teaching parts of that course in English to the volunteers of an organization that I was working at. And I developed my own memory course in English. And it's everything you would want to know about memory, all the techniques, how memory works, the lifestyle factors that go into preventing dementia. So that's pretty much how I got to this.
Okay. So that's beautiful, because when you're young, generally you don't, or not that interested in, the aging population as much, because we're sort of self-centered when we're teenagers. Let's just be honest. And I think, though, that from the Jewish perspective, there is such a strong emphasis on memory. There's all these things you have to remember. First of all, history alone, there's the oral Torah there, we have to remember Amalek, and we have to remember what God did for us, and we have to remember to say Ya'aleh V'yavo, and there's a very large component of remembering historical events, religious teachings. What from the perspective of a memory coach, how does this impact first of all, how does it impact people who are on the cognitive decline? What is their obligation, and how do you help them to not lose that part of their faith?
Okay, that's a really, really an interesting and good question. So yes, as religious women specifically, we have a lot to remember, a lot, right? Whether it's davening and brachos and which kid has to go where, and which kid has to go to davening where and when, and all the little things that we take care of. There's so much to remember. So that's first, even as young mothers and middle-aged mothers, full women have a lot on their plate, a lot to remember, right? Shabbos comes every week where we, cook so much, have to remember to do so much. So I just want to say something about that, which is multitasking. Oftentimes we find ourselves very unfocused. The examples you said, I went to the fridge, what did I come for? Oftentimes we are trying to do too many things at once. So the first of the techniques I teach, actually, to improve your focus and memory is stop multitasking. So if you're 40 something, you might say to me, Rena, I can't, I have to do a million things at once. And I'm going to say to you, if you're forgetting whether you turned off the rice, whether you locked the door, or which kid you picked up, or who needs to go where, stop multitasking, one thing at a time. In the long run, you'll be more efficient and effective. We think that if we do a lot of things at once, we're super productive, but it's not true. Multitasking trips up our brain. And as we get older, it's one of the things that we actually cannot do as well. So we might as well stop doing it now. We might as well focus on one thing at a time, finish one task at a time whenever possible. There are times in life where it's not possible, but we tend to convince ourselves that we need to multitask, but it really trips up your brain. You're less creative. Your IQ goes down 15 points temporarily when you multitask. So you don't really want to be multitasking. Now, to answer your question about older people, it's a very interesting question, right? People get older. Let's say they were diagnosed with MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment. Oftentimes that turns into dementia, or it can turn into dementia of different types. There are different types of dementia. And the question is, let's say a man in his 80s that's diagnosed with dementia is not sure if he davened, or he davened and then he wants to daven again. What do you do? So I'm not a local Orthodox rabbi, and I'm not going to paskin, but from what I've understood from asking and from dealing with this, it's all good. Meaning, if they want to daven again because they don't remember, then they can daven again. What does it hurt? Like, meaning at the point that they don't know exactly the halacha, or they can't remember, then you let them do what they want to do. You don't have to fight with someone not to daven again, or don't fight with someone to daven in the first place. Again, you can ask your local Orthodox rabbi any specific questions, but in general, we don't fight with people over religious things. If someone forgot that it's Shabbos and they turned off the light, they don't know. In their brain, it's not Shabbos. It's not a reality to them. Like we think, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing in the world. But guess what? In their mind, it's not Shabbos. They don't know it's Shabbos. And we just have to be very compassionate and very sensitive, because yelling at them, it's Shabbos, that doesn't help. It makes them feel horrible about themselves, and it doesn't help them remember. Yelling at them doesn't help them remember. So I just saw a great line. We don't want to confront, and we don't want to fight with people. So it's connection instead of confrontation. So instead of fighting with people, don't you know what Shabbos? Why'd you turn off the light? It's connection. You can say gently, today's Shabbos, or come, let's go eat the Seudah, and that will remind them that it's Shabbos. So, or isn't it a beautiful day this Shabbos? You say it gently and calmly and kindly instead of, don't you know what Shabbos? So it's about getting into their reality. Their reality is they don't know what Shabbos. So you can be there to help, encourage, and support, but fighting about it doesn't help. So that's the point that I want to highlight. And yes, of course, it's a value to all of us. But at the point that they don't remember that value, or can't understand the value, or they're confused about the value, we need to get into their reality.
Right. So for as long as I've known this topic, there was always a few things that, let's say, my grandmother did that even like as a teenager, I knew if you do crossword puzzles and you do puzzles and you keep your brain engaged, then your memory issues are going to be significantly improved. So first of all, is that true? Is that a myth? Is that really a helpful way to keep your brain active and helping you remember what you like went to the fridge for? Is that real?
Okay, so the principle of use it or lose it is still relevant. So it's use it or lose it. So if you just imagine sitting in a room all day staring at four walls, what's your brain going to do? It's going to atrophy, right? But if you are exercising physically and you're socially stimulated and you're eating healthy and you're doing cognitive stimulation, then that brain you're using it. It is stimulated. It is challenged. And yes, it's going to grow. So as we get older, we lose neurons, brain cells die, but we can rejuvenate and build more. And by doing the things that we just said. So crossword puzzles are great, but it's not the end all be all, meaning you want to train your brain. But just like we train our bodies, we don't just pick up dumbbells and work our biceps, right? We have to do all the different muscle groups in our body. Same thing with our brain. Our brain has different parts that need to be stimulated. So crossword puzzles are good for one part of the brain. Sudoku is good for one part of the brain. Juggling is good for a different part of the brain. And playing Scrabble is good for a different part of the brain. So it's about not just, those are just a few examples. I could give you like hundreds of examples of what you could do for cognitive stimulation. But the point is you want to cross-train your brain just like you cross-train your body. So if you do crossword puzzles all day and that's all you do and you're really good at that and it's not challenging, then it's not doing the job. So the point is you want to be cross-training and doing a lot of different activities, and you want to be challenging the brain. So anything that's challenging is going to do the trick. In terms of, will that help you remember what you went to the fridge for? So it's two different things. What you went to the fridge for is actually not memory, it's focus. So the way I always say it is, I have the thought, I need the milk from the fridge. I then walk to the fridge. I open the fridge and I can't remember what I came for. Now we blame it on our memory, but it's actually focus. Because what happened? While I took those steps, my brain went into many other places. Maybe the doorbell rang, maybe my phone rang, maybe the kid called my name. So we actually have, they say, between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. So we get distracted by our own thoughts. So that's internal distraction. Or there could have been external distraction, which are all the things outside of us. So we live in a very distracted world. So from when I had the thought, I need the milk from the fridge, till I got there, my brain could have had many, many thoughts. And I distracted my own thinking, right? Mm-hmm. Now that's not a memory issue. That is called focus and attention. So I'll spoiler alert. Here's the quick solution to that problem. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
When you have the thought, I need the milk from the fridge, you keep saying milk, 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 till you get to the fridge. Now it sounds ridiculous, but what are you doing? You're not multitasking. You're not allowing your mind to wander to any other thoughts and you're keeping your brain on one task at hand, which is to get the milk from the fridge. So when you get there, your brain is still on the milk and you can find the milk. You know what you came for. It sounds silly, but it really works. It's just saying it out loud helps you hear yourself, what you're trying to do, and it keeps you focused. That's the really simple solution to that one.
Right. Okay. That's good. So when you've brought up so many different things that I have so many questions, but one question that I have for you is in regards to, oh, there's so much. I'm thinking about ADHD. I'm thinking about the effect of electronics. I'm thinking about depression and anxiety and young motherhood and, middle age crisis and all the things that can detract from our focus and therefore impact, our memory overall. What would you say contributes to this cognitive decline besides for not using that muscle? Because as we're talking about people who are constantly using their brains, we're talking about multitaskers, we're talking about, hyperactivity, we're talking about racing thoughts, anxiety, all of these things they're not using their brain. They're not sitting in a room looking at walls. We're talking about people who have active lives, who go to work, who are engaged in, they learn at nighttime, maybe they have chavrusas or whatnot. What would you say contributes to memory issues that are impacted by these other outside forces? And what are other outside forces besides for the ones that I've just mentioned towards memory decline?
Okay, so that could take another hour to answer, but I'll do it.
Right? I have so many questions.
Yeah, no, it's great points here. Okay, so there are many factors that contribute to memory loss besides a diagnosis of dementia, right? There's the dementias, which is one thing. It's basically a brain that's deteriorating for whatever reasons. But let's even say you don't have a diagnosis and your memory is suffering. What factors could be contributing? So yes, anxiety and depression are very related. If people that really suffer with anxiety and depression do have memory issues, focus and concentration issues. ADD and ADHD, yes, also very related. As people get older, it doesn't go away. They have to really learn to work with it and live with it and really employ the techniques for focusing that I talk about and memory, because that's a real issue for people with ADHD and it's not dementia. There are a lot of other factors. You mentioned technology. Yes, we live in a very distracted world. There's something called digital dementia. The idea being that if we rely on digital stuff too much, are we outsourcing our brain? And the answer is we could be outsourcing our brain. So it's important not to outsource your brain totally. We also want to train our brain, but not strain our brain, right? Just like with our bodies. If you lift weights that are too heavy, you're going to tear a muscle or a ligament. So you have to train your brain, but not strain it. So when you're multitasking too much, you're straining your brain. You're not training it in a good way. There are a bunch of other factors that go into it. Sleep is massive. Sleep is underrated. I call sleep the free magic cure to all diseases, because our brains need sleep desperately. And as young mothers, we for sure don't get it. Middle-aged mothers may or may not get it for different reasons. And then when we go into the 50s and menopause, we don't sleep well. So we have to really, really fight for our sleep, for our brain's sake, if not for everything else. Our brains need to consolidate memories when we sleep, and also toxins are cleaned out when we sleep. So it's extremely important. And we all know what it feels like not to have slept a good night and that your brain is fuzzy and you can't think straight. If you do that for 20 years, yeah, you're going to have memory issues. So we have to fight for our sleep. That means, having good sleep hygiene, going to sleep at the same time every night. It means taking supplements if we need to at different points in our life, supplements that will help us sleep. So sleep is huge. Hydration, water. Our brain needs water to function. And medicines, there's some medicines that have a side effect of memory loss. So some people suffer from memory loss, not because they have anything else wrong with them, but because of the meds they're on. So if you're taking a whole bunch of medicines that have that as a side effect, discuss it with your doctor. They might be able to switch you out for something that doesn't impact your memory. I've done that a few times with clients. Exercise. If you don't exercise, your brain's not going to grow. Physical exercise. So physical exercise on your brain is like water on a plant. So when you put water on a plant, it grows. When you exercise, your brain creates BDNF, which stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. It's the growth factor in your brain. So if you want your brain cells to grow, the best way to do it is to walk, run, jump. Anytime, lift weights, any type of exercise you want to do, but exercise is really important. And the other thing is eating healthy. We might have been told when we were younger that sugar kills our brain cells, and we thought that was ridiculous. But I think they're finding more and more now that sugar kills brain cells.
Right.
Sugar actually lowers the BDNF, what I just mentioned, that exercise increases. So sugar lowers your BDNF, and you don't want to really lower your BDNF because you want those brain cells growing. So a healthy diet, which also we could talk an hour about what that means. But the point is that diet, exercise, social stimulation, and cognitive stimulation are factors that really help us grow, age more sharply and age more confidently and age more healthfully and happily. So even if we're younger, let's say we're in our 40s and 50s, these are things that we have to start to put into place now. So when we grow older, it will be there for us and it will, suit us well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does. You're saying all the things that and she's like, exercise. I'm like, no, not that again. So it's definitely, I feel like by the end of my podcast, or not by the end, because I don't know how long this run is going to go, but everybody I bring on is saying very similar things as a panacea for so many other things like exercise, eating right, sleeping. These are all things that are like literally life-saving in so many ways. So
yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm going to end up doing this stuff. I'm buying the books and I'm okay, whatever. So I'll keep everyone posted to let you know if that stuff really works, but hopefully, it's good. It's good inspiration. It's good motivation. What I've been thinking about, to try to put memory into the Jewish perspective is that I don't recall, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but it's very rare where you hear about Gedolim who have memory issues. Generally, you hear about them learning till the day they die. Like there's no, like I haven't heard of, now it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I remember we are a what if family. If you've ever heard of the book What If, it's a fantastic series started by Rabbi Zilberman, and he asks these questions, hypothetical questions that are halachic based, and people discuss it, and then you reveal the answer, and it's a good way to engage conversation. We do it on Shabbos, and there was one if about this Rav who had dementia, and he's in a nursing home, and they're giving him like scissors to cut out, hearts and circles and coloring books, and the family is very worried. This is not Kavod HaTorah. This was a big Rav, and they're giving him these like memory exercises that are beneath him. They wanted to know if they should find a way to bring him home so that he's not doing it in public. So Kavod Habrios is acknowledged, that he's, just to, you understand what I'm saying, that they were worried. And the answer was, if I'm remembering correctly, was it is not an issue. And at that point, it's not an issue of Kavod Torah because they're treating him with dignity and respect. And it's really a perception of the children. Like it's a children's problem that they feel that way. It's not the actual reality on the ground. But, I'm saying this to say, like, what do you think about how Jewish practice enhances therapy? Enhances memory. Why we don't hear about Gedolim who are losing their cognitive function. What possibly is there any place in Tanakh where we talk about people losing their memory? I know, other than halachically, where we just spoke at the beginning, where we said that, we don't fight them if they want to daven, let them daven again. So that's like halachic implications. But do you have anything in our stories, in all of our history, in all of like our learning, which I don't expect you to know all of, what role does memory play in our dialogue about aging?
So, okay, so first of all, about Gedolim. So there are stories of Gedolim that had memory loss, and the question is like, why? How do we explain it? But what I want to say is that I think the way we explain it is they exercised and stimulated their brain so much that I think that it's what's called cognitive reserve. So that when they are diagnosed, usually it's much later on, meaning that all the stimulation and the learning that they did really helped protect them. For example, there was a story of an 87-year-old math professor who was obviously very smart and still teaching math at that age. And then he was starting to feel like some, memory issues. So he went to the doctors and they scanned his brain and they could not believe what they found. It was like all the symptoms of Alzheimer's were on his brain, but he was not symptomatic like that. He was just starting to feel a decline. And the way they explain that was called cognitive reserve, that he was educated and he was using his brain so that it was a buffer against aging. So I think the same thing with the Gedolim, who their brains are so sharp and their analytical skills are so good that it almost can cover up for the memory issues. But when they come out, usually it's later on. I'm sure there are cases of earlier onset, but usually when we hear about it, it's people that are much older, which means I think that cognitive reserve was protective, right? That the fact that they're using their brains and learning and teaching and studying Gemara so much was very protective. So that without that, I think their brains would have deteriorated much earlier and much faster. That's my theory. I don't know 100%. I mean, it makes sense because it's the use it or lose it. They're really using it.
Right. Well, that's such an interesting point because I think that, people who I know, for example, of a woman who was dealing with like serious pain management issues, and she went but she had young children and she had work and she was doing all these things. And when she went to the doctor, they were like, how are you standing? Like your spine is crooked and your muscles are tight and you have like a serious issue and you're obviously functioning despite symptoms, because she was moving so much and being so proactive with her little kids that it masked the impact of the condition that she had. So I think you're right that it does tend to mask what would otherwise be a significant detriment. So that's very interesting. Do you have any stories of people that you worked with that had some sort of breakthrough or some sort of challenge that you had to work with them to overcome? Do you have any examples that you could give us?
I do. I'll give you two examples. One is of a younger person, one's of an older person. So I worked with one young gentleman. He was in his 20s and he had a history of cognitive impairment. And his mother actually saw me give a webinar at one of the Jewish organizations, and she contacted me and I said, I don't usually work with 23-year-old guys, but I'm happy to try, and if it works, great, and if not, I'll try to find you someone that could help you. I worked with him. Actually, we did like almost 20 sessions. I think it was 16 sessions, one-on-one, because I couldn't put him into any of my groups because everyone in my groups is like 60, 70, and 80, So I worked with him one-on-one and he did amazing, like even better than I would have thought. Like his confidence level, his actual memory, his focus, his executive function. I mean, it was way past what I even expected for him. And at the end of our sessions, he wrote me like a whole page testimonial about how much this helped him. And I was blown away because I really don't work with younger people. I'm a geriatric social worker. So that was really, really amazing. He said it really permeated every aspect of his life. That was fantastic. And the other story, it was amazing. The other story was of an older woman, not very old. She was 65, I think, at the time when she did my course. And she had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident when she was younger, when she was like in her 20s. And then her mother has Alzheimer's. So here she is, 65 years old. She has a past of traumatic brain injury, which is not a very pretty past, even though she recovered from that nicely and went on to work and be very productive. But she had a very bad traumatic brain injury. And then, her future, she's looking at a mother with Alzheimer's. So she was very, very worried. She called me like almost in a panic. Should she do my course? Will it help her? I said, look, I can't promise or guarantee anyone anything because I don't know what's going on in your brain. I can't see into your brain. But I do think that this will really give you the empowerment and the tools that you need to age more sharply. Meaning, if you let that anxiety take over, your brain will not do well. But if I can empower you with a lot of tools, like tons of techniques to remember names, numbers, and lists of items, and I give all the research on lifestyle factors that affect memory. There's so many tools there that you can implement. And it's empowering. It's like, wow, I'll just pull a tool out of my toolbox when I can't remember something. So she did, and she did great. She did the course. It really, really calmed her down and gave her a lot of confidence instead of just being in that fearful, panicky mode.
Right. I mean, so much of what right now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a big emphasis on self-actualization through empowerment of self, meaning I can't this is what I do to my therapist, but every time I would go to a new therapist, I would sit down and be like, okay, can you fix me, please? And they would look at me and say, well, that's not how it works. And I'll be like, but it should work that way because that would just be the icing on this cake, right? But I think right now there's sort of an emphasis on like, nobody can do this but you. So if somebody comes to you and says, how do I improve my memory? You're not saying, well, take this medication and take that medication and your family should do this, your family should do that. It sounds like you're empowering them to come up with strategies for themselves so they don't have to rely on other people. And that is something that is priceless. I think that you can't really put, too much about that. I just know from, especially as you age, you don't want to be a burden and you don't want to, this is a big deal of having to put your whole, decline on your family. Here's a proactive way that they can do something about that. I just love that concept because I know how important it is to be able to say, I have some, like you said, tools in my tool belt that I can pull out. I don't have to call my daughter and be like, when's my doctor's appointment again? Right. Exactly. Like, so I think that is incredibly beautiful. So that's, I just want to say that about that. Now,
yes, I'll just add to that the people want to stay independent for as long as possible. And memory is obviously a very important component to our identity. It is our identity. It's who we are. It's our whole past, right. And the longer we can stay independent, the happier we're going to be. So the fact that you can improve your memory is very empowering because you can stay independent if you can improve your memory. Now, there is a disease, I just want to say, there is a disease process that happens with the dementias. Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. There is a disease process. And I don't want people to think, okay, we can't just totally deny the fact that someone has, a deteriorative brain disease going on. We can't deny it and we can't lie about it. We can work with it, meaning we can try to slow it down. But we can't just you can't give a lot of techniques to someone that has dementia and expect them to implement it. So I just want to be clear about that reality, right? When we talk, I'm very clear that when we talk about someone with a diagnosis or someone without a diagnosis, there's two different things.
Right. Well, I know that my father, he complains about memory a lot. He's constantly forgetting things and putting things places. And I know that he has diabetes. I know he's taking medication that affects his memory. And I know how frustrating it is. He doesn't have a diagnosis of dementia, but he has other factors. His sleep is not great. Diet, he needs to work on that. Exercise for sure. Dad, if you're listening, I love you. You need to work out. I want you to remember us and be well and be here forever. So, that's yeah, of course it's not a panacea, because if you have, calcification on your brain, or you have an actual diagnosis, I know from working myself with elderly as a care manager that, OTs come, speech therapists come, and they try to work with those who have very serious diagnoses,
Mhm.
and it's a challenge, and we're trying to make sure that they're remembering to swallow their food, because
Right,
they forget
right.
how to swallow, and we're trying to remind them, the different day-to-day tasks that they have to do. That's on a different level. I don't think that we're
Yeah,
talking about that.
yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking about we're talking about at this point, which is why you're on my podcast right now, where there are things that I could do right now. It's like
Mhm.
banking, putting money in my savings account. It's like preparing for
Exactly.
retirement. It's reminding myself now that if I start implementing, what did you call it? Technology amnesia. What did you call it?
Digital
Digital
dementia.
digital
Digital
dementia.
dementia.
I think that's such a if I didn't already have a name for the podcast, this is what I would call it: digital dementia. Do I have it? But I still might change the name of the podcast, actually. But you
Okay.
know, it's if I remember. I'm hilarious. No, so this is something that again, it does have. I really like this interplay between, the fact that there's so much in our in our Misora about remembering. I think we were talking about this right before
Yeah.
we started the podcast, remembering Amalek, or remembering what Hashem
Mhm.
did to us coming out of Mitzrayim, or
Mhm. Mhm.
there's Zachar Yom Shabbos Lakacho.
Mhm.
There is a component of memory, Yiskor. There's
Mhm.
so much memory stuff in our Jewish traditions and our values and our rituals.
Yes.
So it would seem that we almost have a biblical obligation to make sure that we cherish and maintain and continue to put in motion tools that help us thrive, so that we're able to do those things at Me'evas
Yes.
Hashana.
Yes. Yes. Well said.
Yes. I don't want to keep you much longer. I know that it's late at night there. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add about this discussion? I mean, first of all, I want to let everyone know that Rena has, she mentioned the program that she has, this Memory Matters, and I will be putting all the information in the podcast notes, so that if you want to reach out to her, if you're interested in the program, you will be able to reach out to her. And of course, you could always reach her through me directly. And so I do want to mention that I will be putting that. But do you have anything that you wanted to mention that we didn't cover?
Yes, I just want to talk for a minute about caregivers because there might be people in here that are caregivers. And I actually just wrote a chapter in a collaborative book that just is new on Amazon. It's called The Caregiver's Advocate. And it's
Mm-hmm.
20 chapters with 20 different authors in different professions in the caregiving field. So if you're a caregiver and you're feeling either stressed, burned out, or worried about your own memory, which is real, I wrote a
Mm-hmm.
chapter in that book it's actually called What Did I Come to the Fridge For? And it's 4 techniques to improve your memory and focus. So it's called The Caregiver's Advocate. It's available on Amazon, and it's gold for the caregiver because it just has so many resources and so much support in there. There's so many different professionals that wrote chapters in there. So that is brand new. So I'm excited about that.
Oh yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I did want to have that conversation, but I do think it is a whole nother conversation about how caregivers can support those that are declining, prevent burnout for themselves. There is a podcast coming out by Dr. Shashi Lewin that I recorded with her about burnout. So please look
Great.
out for that, everybody. And there's also one about neurodivergence and executive functioning. So everyone could look out for that. All these topics sort of interplay with each other. So being a caregiver, that's like
Yeah.
like you said, it's literally a whole book, a chapter that you can discuss. I'm so glad that you brought it up. Everyone should please check that out if they have somebody in their lives who is struggling with these issues. And I just know that from someone who was doing caregiving for over 15 years, having resources is tremendous. Being able to find them, know that they're out there. That's fantastic. So, okay, Rena. So this has been really interesting, really helpful. Also, I feel a little less crazy. And I love that we learned about focus, and attention and the difference between. So I'm going to definitely use your strategies. Before we end, is there anything, other strategies you want to add, or anything you want to tell me about the program that you have? I know you have specifically a course designed to help out with the memory. Can you tell me if there's anything that you could share about those two things, or any strategies and your program?
Sure. So, yes, I have several different programs. I have a membership called Remembership. It's a 3-month membership, which is really fun. All this information you can get on my website, renayudkowsky.com. And I also have a WhatsApp group where every day, 5 out of 7 days, I post brain exercises. So if you're looking to stimulate your brain and do something interesting and fun every day for your brain, it's called Empower. And you can find that also on my website. And that's besides my course. The course is like a 14 session, everything you want to know about memory. That's called the Memory Matters Signature Course. So if you want more information or to reach me, or if you have any questions, you can always email me, rena@renayudkowsky.com. And now I want to share one of the most helpful techniques. Every time I teach this on a webinar, people are like, this really works. They come back to me and they tell me that it works. So it's called, I have an acronym called TEAS, TEAS. It's 4 powerful techniques to improve your focus and memory. And that's actually what the chapter about the book is that I mentioned before. So the book was The Caregiver's Advocate. So it's TEAS. It's an acronym that I put together, TEAS. I'm going to tell you what each of them stand for. I'm going to focus on the S now because it's the most helpful technique. T stands for task, one task at a time. We talked about that a little bit. One task at a time, stop multitasking. E stands for environment. Make a conducive environment to remembering and learning. So if you're trying to read a book and remember what you're reading, and there's a lot of noise in the background, or people calling your name every 2 seconds, there's no way you're going to remember what you're reading. So environment, your environment has to be conducive to learning and remembering. A stands for automatically. Don't do things automatically. What happens when we come into our house and we throw our keys down on the coffee table automatically? And you're talking on your phone and your brain is thinking about what you're making for supper. How likely are you to remember where you put your keys? Not very likely, because you were multitasking. You were not focused on where you were putting it, and your brain and your hand were not in the same place. Your brain was thinking about something and your hand was putting the keys down. So the A means don't do it automatically, which means we need to be more mindful. This is where mindfulness comes in. We are so unfocused because our mind is in too many places at once and it's not aligned with our body. So when my brain and my body are in the same place, I can focus on what I'm doing. So A stands for automatically. We're not doing things automatically anymore. We're really mindful of what we're doing. And the S is senses. The more senses you use to encode the memory, the better it's encoded, the more likely you are to recall it. Encode means to get into your long-term memory. So when you really use your senses to encode the memory, you have a much higher chance of remembering. In fact, when you use one sense to encode a memory, you have about a 10% chance of remembering. When you use 4 senses to get that memory in, you have a 97% chance of remembering. So how do we do that? I'm going to give you a couple everyday examples. So let's take the keys, because that's one of the typical ones. I can't remember where I put my keys, everyone says. So when I put my keys down, I'm going to use my senses. That means the senses are, right, seeing, visual, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. So they don't all apply to all examples, but in the case of the keys, so when I put my keys down now, what am I doing? I'm going to watch my hand drop the keys. I'm looking at my wrist. I'm looking at my fingers drop the keys. I hear, I'm paying 2 seconds of attention. I hear the clink of the keys on my coffee table. So I'm seeing and hearing. I'm feeling the keys leaving my hands. I'm dropping it. It's a feeling of dropping something, right? Tasting and smelling don't apply to this example. And then I'm going to say out loud, I have put the keys on the coffee table, or wherever you put them. What does that do? It anchors the memory into your brain. So when you say aloud, I have put the keys on the coffee table, you will remember hearing yourself say that. It's very simple and it really works. So I'll give you an example. I teach this to seniors all the time. And one lady said to me, every night she goes upstairs, she gets ready for bed, and then she can't remember whether she locked the door or not. She goes back down the steps to check the door. And it was driving her crazy. This is like a quality of life issue. She really, really could not stand that she couldn't remember whether she locked the door or not. I taught her this. We went through the example. She did it. She got back to me a couple of days later and said, you know what? I don't need to go back downstairs every night to check the door. I got it. And I'm like, that's amazing. It sounds like such a silly example, but it is a quality of life issue if you don't have to keep double guessing yourself. So this is where confidence, where you can really believe in your memory because it works. So how did we do that? How did she remember if she locked the door? So usually you lock your door, you're talking on the phone or you're looking at something else, or your mind is thinking about something else and you walk away. You have no idea if you just locked the door. But now we're going to do something different. We're not going to be on the phone because we're not multitasking anymore. I'm going to, again, feel the key in my hand. Is it hot or cold? I'm going to look at the key. I'm going to turn the key in the door. I'm going to watch my wrist turn the key. And also when I close the door, I heard the slam of the door. So I hear the slam of the door. I watch my wrist turn it. I look at the key, feel the key in my hand. And then I say out loud, I have now locked my door. So in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I drive away and I go, oh my gosh, did I lock my door? I did, because I heard myself say, I remember hearing myself say, I now lock the door. I remember what the key felt like in my hand. This takes a couple seconds of attention and intention. My intention is to remember what I'm doing. I do that by paying attention to what I'm doing. Okay, you're making an intention to pay attention. And then you're really encoding it properly into your brain. So these are small examples. The other one is taking your medicine. A lot of older people, and maybe not even older people, have a hard time remembering whether they took their medicine or not, because we do it every day, right? And we don't pay attention to what we're doing. So again, you're looking at the pills. You might even take a second and think about what they're for. When you swallow them with some water, you're feeling the water go down your throat. You taste it if there is a taste. Some pills have a taste, some don't. But you're looking at them, you're feeling them, you're touching them, you're feeling the water go down your throat. And you say out loud, I have now taken my Monday morning meds, or my Tuesday afternoon meds, or my Wednesday night meds. Because then later, you say to yourself, oh, did I take my medicines today? And you go back in your head to like, maybe when you took them and you're like, did I take them? But you know what? If you really looked at them and really felt the water going down your throat and really remember saying out loud, I have now taken my meds, you will remember. So those are 3 everyday examples that people really struggle with. And it bothers them that they can't remember whether they locked the door, where they put their keys, and whether they took their medicines. And you can use this to remember really anything you want. It's use your senses. The S of T's is senses. And it's really, really works. It's really helpful. And don't worry about talking out loud. People say to me, oh, if I talk out loud, everyone's gonna think I'm crazy. I always tell them, don't worry. We'd rather people think you're crazy than you forget whether you locked your door.
Right.
And also today with all the Bluetooth, everyone's talking on their Bluetooth all day. So everyone's talking to into the air anyway. No one ever knows if you're talking to them.
I will say that I didn't realize that I was doing this, but it seems that I've been using one of your techniques. I mean, it sounds like more environment mindfulness, but one thing that I do, and I would recommend for other people to do, is I count my medicine. So I look at my palm of my hand and I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, whatever the number is. And so counting it brings it to me that I'm taking, first of all, the right medication. I know I take 2 in the morning and 3 in the evening. So it helps me feel like, did I take the right one? Did I take, this one or that one? And counting does, that seems to align with the senses, like what you're saying. So I was doing it without even realizing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, counting is great. That's a great one, because you're also saying it out loud, and really what you're doing is you're paying attention to what you're doing. That's great.
Right, exactly. I think the mindfulness is a very crucial one. Okay, well, I really appreciate that you added those helpful tips, T's. I'm definitely going to remember that, and I'm going to try to do the senses. It is difficult because I could see myself like I'm multitasking for a reason. Like I can't slow
Yeah.
down, but
Yeah,
then all the time I waste looking for things, all the time I waste
exactly.
going, why did I get here? How did I get here? What was it kind of it could be a dangerous situation, especially if we're talking about medicines that you need to take or driving and just doing it automatically. So there seems to
Exactly.
be I see a pattern here emerging, and I definitely am grateful that you share that with my audience. Thank you so much for being here and giving us over some of just a little bit of what you have to offer. It sounds fantastic, and everyone could go to renayudkowsky.com, right? And I'm gonna put
Yep.
that in the notes for the episode.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
sure,
And
thank
I
you
think
so
I
much.
sent you a bunch of the links. If anyone's on Facebook, I
Yeah.
have a Facebook group, and
Yes.
I'm on LinkedIn, and there's a bunch of links I sent you. People can look that up.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I'll put that in the notes.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Have a good night.